Welcome back, everybody. We are delighted that you all are back as you think about what your next steps are going to be towards achieving nurse educator excellence. How many of you have struggled with trying to figure out exactly the best way to increase engagement with your learners? All right, so I'm sure if I could see your hands, there would be several raised. Our students have so many competing priorities when they come into the classroom. Our goal as a nurse educator is to ensure that we are aligning our specific teaching strategies for that classroom or clinical experience with our learning objectives. So ultimately, we want to make sure that learning has actually happened with every single interaction that we're having with our students. So, how does this strategy and how does the work that we do every single day align with what the essential says? The essentials say, and also how does it align with the actual NLN hallmarks of excellence? Oh, and by the way, we should also consider what the regulatory body is and what it says as it relates to the standards for the specific accreditation that we have also received. So that's what we're doing on this journey. We're mapping the essentials with the hallmarks of excellence, also aligning with those standards associated with the accrediting bodies. Now, we're not focusing on a specific accreditation because we know there's several. So whether you're AACN, you're CCNE, or you're CNEA, all of the accrediting bodies really do have a consistent theme, a consistent pattern, and that is standards. So they outline exactly what those standards are that we should meet. And you may wonder, what does this have to do with achieving nurse educator certification? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's why we've integrated different aspects of the hallmarks of excellence, which all map back and align with our nurse educator competencies. So first, let's make sure you have the right resources in front of you. I want to make sure that you have printed out the detailed test blueprint. Now, the one we have today is the actual C&E blueprint. But what you want to do is go to the NLN.org website and choose the specific certification that you're on this journey for, or maybe you've already achieved certification and you're just focusing on your renewal credits. That's great too. So you want to print out that handbook that's relevant for your specific certification or renewal, and then the study worksheet. Make sure that you printed that out too. We want you to go ahead and put the date on the study worksheet because this is going to help you stay focused as you move forward on your journey. And then the next resource, if you have it in front of you, is going to be our workbook. Okay, so the actual C&E study workbook is an excellent resource to help you stay focused on your journey as well. If you do have our workbook, we want you to turn to part 1 and part 2. This is going to be a great overview to help you stay focused on the content that we are mapping and discussing as we move forward on this snapshot series. So part 1 really identifies what those teaching strategies are and how they align with learning theory. Now we're still using the 6th edition, so pull that out too if you have it, the 6th edition of Billings and Halstead. And the reason why is because this was the one that the exam writers used to map to the current version of the exam. But if you have the 7th edition, that's a great resource too. So learning theory tends to be a gap area for many nurse educators. So we want you to go ahead and turn to table 14.1 in chapter 14. This is going to list out the 5 main categories of learning theories or educational theories to make sure that you are aligning your teaching strategies with the evidence, right? We want to know the what is it that we should engage in when it comes to evidence-based teaching strategies and learning strategies. So what does that look like in our classroom? And then we also want to know the why. So what is the rationale for using flipped classroom, for using group discussions, for using active learning strategies, such as students engaging in review of literature and summarizing, maybe even reflecting on their clinical experiences. So what is the purpose and how does it align with the evidence that is stated in chapter 14 related to learning theory? All right, so that's how we're going to get ready for our content today. And I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of going directly to our thought-provoking question, let's go ahead and read some of the content that is really important for you to have knowledge about as it relates to our review today. So page 423, this is in the 6th edition, is where we're going to read, and I want us to take some time to read 2 paragraphs. Okay, so stay with me. So page 423, again, this is the 6th edition. The first paragraph says nurse educators should develop their online courses according to theories of teaching and learning and instructional design. And they refer us back to chapters 14 and 16. These theories suggest that students learn when they are actively engaged, interact in a social and applied context, and reflect on their practice. Okay, I'm going to read that again. The evidence says that students are actually more likely to learn when they're actively engaged, number one. Number two, when they interact in a social and applied context. Okay, I want you to think about what these words mean, and more importantly, how these teaching strategies show up in your classroom. And number three, when they reflect on their practice. So reflection is so important. All right, the next paragraph says, when developing online courses, faculty first need to consider whether the course outline, and the needs of the students can best be met through a synchronous experience or an asynchronous experience. And sometimes we integrate both, okay? And then the last part I want to read is, at this time, faculty also need to consider what learning or course management tools and online resources are available or need to be acquired to support the pedagogical goals. Okay, so we know that because students can get distracted and because we have adult learners, we do have to create these high impact teaching strategies in order for learning to happen. Malcolm Knowles talks about his work related to adult learning theory and having the importance of self-actualization as part of our interactive experience with our students. So what does that look like? Well, when you're on your journey to CNE, you are using the blueprint, that detailed exam blueprint, to really take a self-assessment of where you are today as it relates to those sub-competency statements, okay? With our students, it's the same strategy. We want students to have an increased awareness of what their knowledge gaps are so that they can actively engage and really partner with us to ensure that those learning gaps are closed, right? We want to build that bridge from theory to practice in order to help our students at that highest level, which is application, analysis, and creation, in order for students to make safe patient care decisions. Okay, so we took a different approach in this snapshot, and hopefully you're taking notes, you're writing down those key concepts that we're talking about as we now transition and looking at exactly how this aligns with the evidence specifically related to those three areas that we're mapping on this journey over the next several snapshots. In this series, we're really talking about how do we align these really important frameworks. So we have an excellent resource with our NLN hallmarks of excellence. And then we pair it with our nursing program standards. Okay, so we should have nursing program outcomes, and what we want to look at is going to be our board of nursing, that's a governing body, as well as our accrediting body, to be laser focused on how our specific nursing program standards align with hallmarks of excellence. And then that last framework that we're aligning our content to is going to be the AACN essentials. All right, so here's some homework for you. I want you, as part of your debrief, after you review the snapshot, I want you to go back, pull out these hallmarks of excellence. They're listed right here in the description. Pull out your nursing program standards, your outcomes, your program outcomes, okay? Or maybe you pull out your self-study from your last accreditation visit experience. And I want you to pull out the AACN essentials. Now, you don't have to print them all out, or if you have the booklet, if you've been to a workshop, that's an excellent resource to have too. But we want to make sure you have the right resources as you think about what your next steps are going to be to ensure that you all have a solid, not only nursing education program, but that you have a clear path to achieving nurse educator excellence in alignment with these frameworks and these evidence-based practices. So we had one of our colleagues, Professor Bailey, who shared with us that Dr. Sellars Educate is by far the most informative program that I attended in preparing for the CNE clinical exam. I signed up for the self-paced review boot camp and took advantage of all of the free YouTube educational videos. I also purchased the C&E and C&E CL study workbooks. Great personal support from Dr. Sellars A+. Well, we're excited whenever we hear from colleagues that they have achieved success on the C&E clinical exam. We're even more excited when we hear that you truly have engaged in a transformation. The journey can be overwhelming, and we don't want you to move through your nurse educator career alone. Okay, so that's why we are here to really support. I want to go back to this slide at the very bottom. It says Dr. Sellars Educate provides programs by nurse educators with you in mind. So we all here at the advisory board teach, and we're all certified. Okay, so we are working right alongside with you to help you achieve nurse educator excellence. You will get top industry resources and proven courses, plus the essential guides, which is so important to help ensure that you have consistent support on your C&E journey, okay, at your individual pace. So learner engagement, let's look at this thought-provoking question. We're going to switch over to Prezi. We like using different technologies. So let's flip over to Prezi and see what you all think about this thought-provoking question. All right, so here we go. So the question is related to student engagement. So student engagement in the classroom provides connection with content and supports better learning experiences. Which question would address student engagement associated with spirit of inquiry and commitment to lifelong learning? So we have three options to align with what the NLN standards are today. So the first question is, in what ways are students open to trying new things? B, in what ways do students brainstorm together about concepts? And C, in what ways do students express professional identity? All right, so I'm going to give you a few seconds to take a look at the question. And then we're going to talk about what you should consider with every single question on the C&E exam. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to write down on your sheet what you think this question is asking you. And now let's go back to what those standards are related to every single question on the C&E exam that you want to consider. Okay, so first of all, when you get to the C&E exam, we want you to, and hopefully the goal is that you are going to an actual testing site, because this is going to help ensure that you do not have distractions that may cause you to choose an incorrect answer. All right, so these are the two questions we want you to ask yourself for every single question on the C&E exam. What is this question really asking me? Okay, so that's what we want you to think about in our thought-provoking question today as well. And number two, what is it that I know for sure about content in this question? Okay, so again, the first question we want you to ask yourself when you get to the C&E exam, and as we're going through our thought-provoking question, what is this question really asking me? And second of all, what is it that I know for sure about content in this question? All right, so stay with us, because as we wrap up, we will come back to the correct option. I also want to point out that we've mapped our content today to three different specific competencies. So we have facilitation of learning, learner socialization, and scholarship for those colleagues that are on the C&E renewal journey. That's a very important part of you ensuring that your renewal credits are aligned with the competencies based on the NLN requirements. Here's the question. What are the core competencies in nursing, and how do they impact nursing programs? And that's exactly what we're talking about in this snapshot. Developing these core competencies helps ensure that our students are practice ready as they transition into the clinical setting. This is going to help us meet the needs of healthcare environments, and also it's going to align our nursing programs with the specific AACN essentials, which are a framework for nursing excellence and nurse educator excellence. When we talk about alignment, what we mean by that is we are truly integrating, right? So we're looking at the core competencies that have been outlined by the AACN organization, and then we're considering how does it show up in our actual curriculum. In order for us to ensure that we are developing a solid nursing program that is going to equip our nursing students, our future nurses, with the content that they need to make those safe patient care decisions, we have to ensure that we are aligned, that we have mapped essentials and other frameworks to our actual curriculum, to our actual content. This is going to help increase the likelihood that students feel more confident in their nursing care decisions and are more competent as well. The AACN Essentials Framework was last updated in 2021, and the goal is that there is this strong alignment with the nurse educator competencies that we're talking about in this series to improve nursing curriculum. That's ultimately the goal of the framework. So we are truly merging the two to ensure that we are not only prepared for the CNE exam, but also that you're going through this transformative process of looking at what those evidence-based practices are and how you can integrate them into your curriculum and into your everyday teaching strategies that you're using. So we're going to do just a brief overview of the Essentials framework. First, there are 10 domains, and these broad areas represent the core aspects of nursing education as well as nursing practice. And then there are 8 competencies. So each domain contains a specific competency that represents the expected knowledge, skills, and attitudes for our nursing graduates. And then underneath those 8 competencies are a total of 66 sub-competencies, which further break down those specific, measurable learning outcomes that guide the development of our curriculum as well as our assessment. So putting all 3 of these components of the framework together, the domains, the competencies, and sub-competencies are going to help ensure that nursing education, our programs that we are developing for our future nurses, are aligned with those demands, those high demands of the healthcare setting. So this is really not only the framework, but the key to success when we talk about what exactly should we do to ensure that our nursing students are practice ready. Well, there's no secrets. We just have to invest the time and the resources we need to ensure we have mapped our frameworks to our actual curriculum. The 70-20-10 approach to learning is one that's very relevant, not only for you all on your journey, but it's also relevant for our students as well. This approach, which is evidence-based, and you can see here this diagram is produced by slidemodel.com. It simply says that we learn in 3 different categories. So first, just like you all are engaged in right now, it's a workshop, it's a webinar, online portals, right? It's a learning event. That's what it's classified as, that we are able to gather learning, at least from a structured learning standpoint. 10% of our knowledge is going to come from a structured learning experience. So that's the foundation. And then there's momentum that happens, right? We learn from others. That's the 20%. So there's an element here as part of your journey on our snapshot, in our snapshots on our YouTube channel, right? You're learning from others, being that we have developed the curriculum. So there's coaching, mentoring, feedback, communities of practice, blogs, YouTube videos, right? So there's momentum because you're able to come to a community where you have evidence-based content and you can take pearls of wisdom and actually apply them. And then there's that 70% where you are engaged from a direct experience in the actual learning process. So 70% of our learning comes from application, comes from integration. So it's called action learning, problem solving, experiential learning, shadowing, project assignments are all examples of ways that we can actually engage in that higher level of learning at that 70% threshold. So as you step back and think about how you're engaged right now, we want you to follow all 3 categories as a result of our time together today. You are going to learn from experience because you're going to integrate these evidence-based practices that we talked about. Going back to page 423 in Billings and Halstead, taking some time to really read through that entire chapter, chapter 22, that talks about the importance of creating learning experiences where our students are fully engaged and we are a collaborator, right? A partner, a coach in helping our students learn. There are three different categories we want you to think about as it relates to learner engagement. First is that spirit of inquiry and commitment to the lifelong learner. We know that it's an iterative process with our learners, that there may be content areas that they're really sharp at, right? They're really sharp in their knowledge, and then other areas not so much. We want to commit to innovation, performance improvement. Maybe we don't get it quite right the first time we integrate a new technology or a new teaching strategy, but we don't want to give up, right? We want to take that data based on feedback that we receive from our students, and we want to make changes. Same approach with our curriculum. If our students have a specific clinical assignment and we're not sure as to whether or not it's going to be a great fit, then it's a chance for us to try it out. We want to gather feedback from our students, from our healthcare partner, make improvements, and then make a decision about whether or not that clinical site needs to be chosen for future clinical experiences. And then last is really our responsibility as a professional in nursing. We want to engage in demonstrating high levels of leadership. We want to engage in scholarly work, and we want to mentor not only our students, but we want to mentor our colleagues as well. Okay, so those are the three categories when we talk about being engaged in the learning process and the learning journey. Those are some considerations. All right, so now we're ready for the thought-provoking question. And so hopefully you've written down what you think the best option is. And the best answer is going to be B. Okay, so think about what this question was asking us, looking at student engagement. So which question would address student engagement associated with spirit of inquiry and commitment to lifelong learning? So we mapped it to hallmark number 1, which is engage students 1-1. Students are excited about learning and exhibit a spirit of inquiry as well as a commitment to lifelong learning. So the question is, in what ways do students brainstorm together about concepts? Okay, so A was good, but it was more related to hallmark 1-2, commitment to innovation, continuous quality improvement, and excellence. And same thing with option C. It's more aligned with hallmark number 1-2, which is a good one to focus on as well. So how are you feeling? What's your number? Do you feel lost? Not sure what we've talked about today? Or are you ready to teach? We know that engaging in a high level of application happens when we actually teach concepts. All right, and then what we want you to do is to write down what specific gap areas do you still have, and what are going to be your next steps. We want you to reach out to us if you have questions. Our email is info@sellarseducate.com. Until next time, we hope that this snapshot has been helpful, and we hope that you will engage in the learning experience at a higher level as a result of our time together today. Have a great one, everybody.